disappear in moments.
The ultimate gala spectacle.
Holy Mother of God on earth and in heaven at the exact same time.
You want a piece of me? You got it!
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes!
This is a Fox News Alert. I'm Kelly Wright in New York. National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has resigned. It follows revelations he might not have been truthful about his conversation with the Russian administration. We go now live to our White House chief correspondent, John Roberts, standing by with more details. John, what can you tell us about this unfolding situation that is rocking the Trump administration at this hour?
No, Kelly, I mean, this is kind of a logical outgrowth from what we've seen over the past 12 hours coming out of the White House. I was told that, as of last night, it looked as though National Security Advisor Flynn would probably, and the words that were used were, quote, skate through this controversy. They had the Prime Minister of Canada coming. They needed to have the National Security Advisor in place for talks with Canada. But then as of this morning, when the president saw all of the negative press that was coming out about Flynn and about these conversations that he had with the Russian ambassador, that he just thought that Flynn was becoming far too big a liability. There's a point where your worth to the administration is outweighed by the distraction that you've become. And I think Flynn probably saw the writing on the wall. This afternoon, Kellyanne Conway said about 3 or 3:30 that Flynn had the full confidence of the president. And that could be seen to be taken one of two ways. If you've got the full confidence of the president, he either believes in you or he's getting ready to pitch you overboard. I think there's a long and rich history in Washington of people who had the full faith and confidence of the president as they were literally being shown the door. But really what happened here was that he couldn't survive all of the negative press. And it wasn't so much the fact that he had these conversations, I think, Kelly, with the Russian ambassador. I think the problem for him really was that he told Vice President Mike Pence within the past week that he didn't have any conversations with Sergei Kislyak about Russian sanctions that were leveled against Russia by the Obama administration for the hacking scandal. And then Mike Pence went on the air and stated emphatically on one of the Sunday morning shows that Mike Flynn had not had any conversations about that topic, when indeed it looked like Flynn either had conversations about it or might have and couldn't recall. So he really put the vice president in a bad place, and I think ultimately, Kelly, that's what took Flynn out of his position.
Which goes to the heart of, one would arguably say, loyalty and trust. Could he be trusted if he had put the vice president in that kind of situation moving forward?
Here's one of the things with Flynn, because, I mean, he was as loyal as they come to President Trump. I mean, he was one of the first people to get on board. He was the first person with some stars behind his rank who had come out for then candidate Donald Trump. And he introduced him at many of the campaign events that I was at. This was a loyal guy who really believed in Trump, and I'm sure that this was a very, very difficult decision for the president, to get rid of somebody who had been with him for as long as Flynn had been. But then at the same time, he apparently was not completely forthcoming with the vice president, apparently put the vice president in a bad position, and then was bringing all of this negative press upon himself. And don't forget, this is not the first time that that's happened. There were the issues with his son as well, over the security clearance and then over the whole pizza parlor thing. And I think the president just looked at him and said, as much as I might like this guy, as loyal a soldier as he might have been, he's just too much of a liability from a public relations standpoint right now. We're trying to get too much done, and we can't have this amount of baggage here at the White House.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. The White House or the Trump administration is trying to do a lot at an accelerated pace that Washington is unfamiliar with, and certainly as they do that, they're ruffling some feathers. And this particular situation, what do you anticipate the fallout might be from the resignation of Mr. Flynn?
Well, I think, first of all, the Democrats are probably going to smell blood in the water. They're going to think that they got their first casualty. And to some degree, they might be right. A lot of this was Flynn brought upon himself. But then, again, a lot of this was pushed by Democrats as well. They were trying to get one of President Trump's nominees for the cabinet. They haven't been able to yet. Andrew Puzder looks like potentially the most likely target if they're to prevent the confirmation of one of his nominees. So it may be that it may be that they see blood in the water, they smell blood in the water, and they start to go after more of President Trump's nominees or other people who are in the administration. Or it may be that people say, hey, we got one, and now let's back off and see where this administration goes. I would think it's probably the former, Kelly, rather than the latter.
Yeah.
And we'll see. And then, of course, there's the question of who does he replace him with? And, the name David Petraeus was floating around an awful lot during the transition, and he was spending an awful lot of time with the president-elect. And you wonder, is there a position now for David Petraeus opening up at the White House? That's another possibility. The only thing is that his conditions of his parole, as my understanding, would not allow him to leave the country until April. But then there's always the possibility that if President Trump really wanted Petraeus, he could pardon him.
Let's get more on this first, what some are calling a major personnel crisis for the Trump administration and what it could mean for this president going forward. Syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer joins me now from Washington. Charles, your thoughts as this is developing late this afternoon?
Well, what strikes me is how bizarre the whole story is. This is a cover-up without a crime. The idea that one should be all aghast because the incoming national security advisor spoke with the Russian ambassador and spoke about sanctions seems to me to be perfectly reasonable. The idea that it was illegal is preposterous. When I hear Nancy Pelosi get all upset about this and how in the grip of the Russians this shows us to be, this is an absurdity. But then you ask yourself, well, then why did he lie about it, even internally in talking to the vice president? And that shows a tremendous lapse of judgment and a sort of a lack of trustworthiness. So the president is faced with a very difficult problem. If he fires him, then it puts in question the president's own judgment, choosing him in the first place, having to fire him within 3 weeks. On the other hand, this is a guy who has been advising him, stuck with him, has appeared to have done the right thing in talking with the Russian ambassador and done a crazy thing in lying about it to Pence. And he's got to decide how it's going to look. Either way, he's going to be hurt. But if he is going to get rid of him, he'd better have somebody of stature waiting in the wings.
There are all kinds of stories, all kinds of sources, anonymous, of course, telling all kinds of people that he's toast by the end of the week. There are people saying that General Petraeus is being considered to take the national security advisor. None of this confirmed, of course, Charles. And the person who has to make the decision about this close confidant is President Trump.
And I think that's the reason that his fate of Flynn is hanging in the balance. I'm not sure that Trump knows his own mind even now. I'm sure that the silence over the weekend was a result of the fact, I don't think that was a great strategic decision, keep people hanging and all this. I think he simply didn't know which way to go because he loses either way. One way it makes him look bad choice. The other way he leaves Pence hanging and disrespected if he sticks with Flynn. So he knows it's a tough choice. He knows he's going to lose one way or the other. And I think the reason we're waiting for a decision is that it is entirely up to the president. And I'm not sure the president himself has decided.
America is, of course, a nation of citizens, most of which are legal immigrants, not necessarily refugees. So why do we conflate the two phrases, immigrants and refugees? Well, here to discuss is conservative filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, this may feel like a small thing, but it isn't. There's a big difference between why an immigrant, legal or otherwise, may want to come to America vis-a-vis a refugee. Break this down for us a little bit.
Well, America is a nation of immigrants. We're not a nation of refugees, and there's a critical difference between the two. An immigrant is somebody who has made a decision of the will to choose America. Immigrants want to come to this country because they believe in America. They want the kind of life that America makes possible. Now, if you think about what a refugee is someone who just wants to get away from some problem, a civil war, a famine, something that's going on in his or her own country. So the difference can be summarized as that the immigrant wants to come here, the refugee simply wants to get out of there.
Now, does that help speak to what President Trump has talked about when he talks about allegiance, about loving your country? You can assume an immigrant coming here is seeking something, a better life or a love of America, vis-a-vis a refugee who may be fleeing something else, but they're bringing with them a different perspective that may not necessarily mean allegiance to the country they're coming to.
I think that's true. I also think it's much more difficult to vet refugees than immigrants because if you think about it, an immigrant is typically coming from a settled community. They have neighbors, they have documents, they have references, so you can check them out. A refugee is a displaced person, typically uprooted from their home, from their family, and so as a result, it's much more difficult to figure out who that person is and whether or not they pose an actual threat when they come to this country.
Dinesh, if you can, I know in some cases refugees are assigned or based on preference. I know for an interpreter in Iraq that I served with would come to America specifically, but are most refugees placed just where they're able to go, or do they get a choice in that process?
Well, I think the crucial issue here that bears on Trump's travel ban is simply this, and in this case, there's no difference between illegal immigrants and refugees. The primary duty of any government is to protect the security of its own citizens. If we go back to the theory of the American founding, that's why we have a government at all, to protect us primarily from foreign and domestic thugs. It's kind of like if someone were to bang at your door at night and say, listen, my car broke down, I'm in distress, you gotta help me. Your decision to help, humanitarian though it may be, is going to be subordinate to the protection of your own family, and it's the same thing here.
Sure, you don't necessarily have an obligation to open your door and say, stay in my living room while we figure out what's going to happen. There are any number of different options where you can still be helpful to that particular person. Dinesh D'Souza, thank you very much for breaking it down this morning. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
You got it.
Here now to debate the issue, Univision News anchor, Fusion host Jorge Ramos. Jorge, are you at all concerned about Americans that have been killed by illegal immigrants? Are you at all concerned about the drugs that have come into this country? Are you all concerned about the money Americans have to pay for illegal immigrants as it relates to our educational system, our healthcare system, our criminal justice system? Because you say you don't recognize the country. Well, I think America is a country of law. Do any of these things impress you at all or bother you at all, or you have any concern for your fellow American citizen?
Absolutely, absolutely. And no one here, Sean, and this is very important, no one here, including me, is defending criminals in this country. No one here is defending terrorists or rapists. No one is doing that. But the way you are presenting this issue is absolutely wrong. Completely biased, because you are presenting. Just let me say
excuse me, Jorge. With all due respect,
you are presenting.
I'm not going to let you challenge my facts.
I'm willing to debate with you, Sean, but just let me give you my argument.
But let me give you my argument,
and then we'll
give me all the arguments you want. Let's stick to the facts.
Okay, all right. This is the reality. The vast majority of immigrants in this country, the vast majority, Sean, are not criminals, are not terrorists, and are not rapists. Check the report by the American Immigration Council. Immigrants are less likely to be criminals than those born in the United States. Immigrants are less likely to be behind bars than U.S. citizens.
That's not true. According to this, that's not true.
Well, I mean, those are the facts.
Let me give you the 70,000 people that went to a federal prison. That's just not true.
So it is what you are presenting is as if most immigrants in this country are criminals. Yes, I agree. Undocumented immigrants they committed a crime by coming to the United States, but that doesn't mean that they are killing Americans.
Excuse me.
That doesn't mean that they are rapists.
Not every. A lot of people want a job.
Now is my chance, Sean. Let me give you another number, which is true. Since 1990, and I think we can agree with this, the number of the undocumented population grew from 3.5 to about 11 million. I think we can agree with that, right?
I don't think anybody knows the true number, but that's the number many people use.
We all are working with 11 million, and I believe in that, even though you might not agree with that. But we agree that it went from 3.5 to 11 million. Okay. According to the FBI, in that same period, violent crimes in this country, decreased by 48%. So that's the FBI. So what do you want me to say? Those are the facts, Sean. And even though you might want to present undocumented immigrants as criminals, that's not the case. You've been following this case, right? Guadalupe Garcia.
In the fiscal, hang on, now it's my turn. Now it's my turn.
Okay, go ahead. Right. And then let me talk about Guadalupe Garcia, because she's just the mom who got deported. But go ahead.
In the fiscal year 2015, 36.6% of the over 70,000 federal sentences were for crimes committed by illegal immigrants. I just played for you. I sat in a security briefing over a 7-year period of time. Texans alone, 642,000 crimes, including, not the majority, including rape, sexual assault, murders of people in Texas.
And I'm not defending that. I'm not defending that.
Okay, well, 642,000 in one state in 7 years is unforgivable.
I don't agree with that.
It's unforgivable, and we ought not risk American lives. 642,000. I want you to listen to this woman, and it's an angel mom. I did a whole town hall with mothers who had their children murdered by illegal immigrants. Listen to this mother.
Let's listen to.
My son was an integral part of the community, and his life was cut short by a repeat criminal, and the loss has been felt for years.
My son was murdered April 27, 2002. When I found out this guy was here illegally and had crossed the border, I was outraged. This should not be happening. Our children should be protected. Our citizens should be protected. Us Americans should come first.
Here's my question. Donald Trump wants to get rid of criminal aliens. He said he will show more compassion for those people that have been law-abiding.
He hasn't shown more compassion so far.
Excuse me. Yes, he has. Now, he has not been. No, what you're describing is not true. But I'm asking, do you agree with me? Should every criminal illegal immigrant be thrown out of this country? Every one.
If they committed a crime, real crime, absolutely.
Good.
Well, the problem is, how do you define a crime?
Okay.
For instance, if you use
how about driving drunk on our streets?
License, would that be considered a crime?
You know what bothers me? How many times have you been down to the border where all the crime is? Have you ever been to a drug warehouse?
I've been in this country for 33 years.
Have you ever been to a drug warehouse down in Mexico?
Dozens or hundreds of times. I have been there.
You've been to the drug warehouses.
But the problem, Sean, is that you're criminalizing a whole population.
I am not criminalizing the whole population.
Now is my turn. Now is my turn to talk about
what you said is not true. 642,000 Texans. 642,000.
I just gave you the numbers. Thanks to immigrants, crime is going down in this country. I'm not defending those who have killed people. I'm not defending those who have committed rape. I can't even imagine the pain that the mothers that you shown are feeling right now because of the loss of their family members. I honestly,
and there's many more. Many more.
Incredible, but the vast majority, Sean, and this is very important for the American people to know.
Not one American should die.
The vast majority of undocumented immigrants in this country are not criminals, are not terrorists, are not gang members. Now it's my turn.
Go ahead.
Guadalupe Garcia. She's been in this country for 22 years. Look what Donald Trump did. This is what Donald Trump did.
Okay. Nice emotional pitch. She here
Jacqueline,
illegally?
14, legally. Born in the United States.
Here's my question back to you.
A U.S. citizen. So this is exactly what Donald Trump, the deportation czar, has been doing, dividing, destroying American families.
Let me ask you this, because that's not the norm either. But let me ask you this, because why should
it's been the norm lately.
The American taxpayer pays trillions of dollars for illegal immigrants that didn't respect our laws and sovereignty to send their kids to school. We've spent trillions of dollars over the years as it relates to the criminal justice system and our health care system. Now, you say this isn't the America I know. Well, what America do you know? That where people break the law and that people don't respect the American sovereignty, that Americans have to be, some of them, lose their children just because you define compassion as open borders and you're willing to risk and you're willing to risk the lives of Americans to allow this insanity to continue? Don't you agree we need a wall with a door?
I don't agree that we need a wall because almost 40% of all immigrants, it doesn't matter how big or how tall.
How about a wall with a door? What's wrong with that?
About 40% of all undocumented immigrants come by plane or with a visa.
Why should Americans pay for Mexicans
what do you want to spend $21 billion for a wall that isn't going to work? It's a waste of time and money.
Why should Americans have to pay for the education of citizens of Mexico, for their education, their health care, and if they break laws, sending them to jail? Why do we have to pay trillions of dollars?
That's a good point.
Do you care about the Americans?
Let me give you the other argument. Let me give you the other argument. Of course, especially cities and states, they're spending billions of dollars on immigrants. I agree with that. Now, we have to say the other
Who's going to pay us back?
Yeah. Okay, they are already paying that because undocumented immigrants, they pay taxes, they create jobs, they do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. Remember the immigration proposal in 2013.
Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Does it ever seem like the media get weekly memos telling them how to word their news coverage? Well, if they do, this past weekend's theme was fear. On Saturday, hundreds of illegal immigrants were arrested in coordinated ICE raids across 6 states. Arresting illegal immigrants is the job of ICE, so you might think, well, no big deal. But the press apparently got the memo saying otherwise. Fear spreads across the U.S. after immigration arrests, blared one CNN headline. Fear grips immigrant communities after ICE raids, cried the AP. Trump administration's deportation raids sparked fear in immigrant communities, said Time magazine. What's this new fear epidemic? Where does it come from? David Leopold is an immigration attorney and a critic of President Trump's immigration policies. He joins us tonight from Cleveland. David, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So we read today that the government of Mexico is spending tens of millions of dollars to fight these executive orders and that they're mobilizing U.S. consulates across the United States to help people in the United States illegally remain here. Why do you think the government of Mexico is doing that?
Well, I can't speak for the government of Mexico, but I can speak for the people of, that I deal with. And I think in your open, you mentioned fear. And I think it's Donald Trump. I think it's Steve Miller. I think it's Steve Bannon who are the ones who are perpetuating fear. And I think it's an overt attempt to create chaos. We need a president, Tucker, that is going to bring stability. We need a president who is going to give us confidence. We need a president who's going to respect the rule of law. And we've got a president who in the first 3 weeks of his term has got Ninth Circuit ruling against him because he's violated the Constitution. He's got a battery of lawsuits out of New York. He's got people trapped in airports, which, a court took care of. This is not America. This is not what we are. We can do better.
Okay, so I want to get back to something you said that I absolutely agree with, which is that chaos is a bad thing and it degrades our society. And it's kind of hard to come back from chaos. So the government of Mexico, and this bears directly on what you do, so please don't take a pass on this question. Jorge Castaneda, who's the former foreign minister of Mexico under Vicente Fox, big deal there, Princeton graduate, by the way, has said that the new strategy among rich people in Mexico is to fund lawsuits that will tie up our judicial system. There's a massive backlog of immigration cases, as you know. He said he'd like to increase his backlog, 5x, and bring our system to a halt until the president relents. That is a strategy based on creating more chaos, is it not?
Well, look, again, I'm not a Mexican official, and if you want to talk to them, I suggest you bring them on the show. But what I can tell you is that hang on, you asked a question, let me answer, Tucker.
Please do.
You mentioned the immigration court's backlog, and they are backlogged, 500,000 cases. Why is that? That's because the Republicans refused in 2013 to pass an immigration reform bill in the House of Representatives, even though the votes were there. We could have reformed the immigration system, and you and I would be having a conversation tonight about an orderly country, about a place where people are not in panic.
That's a little, come on, David. I mean, I was here for that whole argument, and I don't think that the so-called immigration reform that you're referring to, there's good and bad in it, but it wouldn't have fixed everything, and that's an overstatement, and you know it. But what I'm so struck by is the fact that you're unwilling to even comment on what the Mexican government is doing. And I wonder if you extended that same courtesy to the Russian government. I'm sure you were in a tizzy like everybody on the left 2 months ago with the idea that the Russians were trying to foul with our system. They're trying to influence the outcome of our systems. Here you have the Mexican government on our southern border saying we're going to shut down the judiciary in your country unless you do what we want. And you've got no comment on that?
Well, look, our judiciary, our Article I courts speak for themselves. They're the same courts that ruled against Donald Trump, the independent judges. Okay. If you want to talk about the judiciary, let's ask the president, because he is trying to delegitimize the judiciary in this country.
Work with me here. Let's have a rational back and forth. Well, we can talk about the same thing. I know that you don't like Trump and you're mad about a bunch of different things, and some are legitimate and some aren't.
I'm not mad.
You disapprove. But we're talking about immigration policy, and I'm just asking you to comment on something in the news today about the Russian government trying to influence our immigration policy in the same way that you would like to, and I'm wondering, why do you think they're doing that, and is it legitimate?
Well, I don't know what the Russian government's up to. What I do know is that,
the Mexican government.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Mexican government. Again, I don't know what they're up to. Look, I think we as Americans ought to be running our own courts, ought to be running our own immigration policy. I don't think other governments, whether it's Mexico, whether it's Russia, whether it's Israel, whether it's France, ought to be involved in our judicial system. What I do want to see, though, Tucker, and this is why, you said I was angry, what I'm concerned about is that we've got a new president. And what this president has done, together with people like Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller, who, by the way, was on television yesterday.
This is just silly. I mean, this is just...
I
doubt you know anything about what those guys do for a living. I'm not here to defend them, but let's just get back to the core issue here. And I'm serious. Like, why do you think that we have 11, 12, 13, we don't know the full number, but million people living in this country illegally? Maybe since you do this for a living, you've thought about it a little bit. And maybe it's connected to the fact that rich people in Mexico want them to stay here because they don't want to pay for the social safety net that we have. They want the American middle class to pay for it.
Well, I don't think that's quite fair.
Oh, it's not quite fair? Really? No. Because they pay less in taxes, the rich in Mexico, than any OECD country there is.
I'm not talking about
be asking for reforms in Mexico, no?
I'm talking about the people here. We're talking about 11 million people, most of whom have been here for many years, most of whom have long ties to the United States, have U.S. citizen children, pay their taxes, mind you, if through ITN, International Tax ID numbers. Who do you think is supporting our Social Security system? Look, the immigrants in this country came to this country like my grandfather did when he fled the Holocaust. They came here for a better life. They came here for in many cases, for shelter. What we have now is a president who wants to he wants to throw out refugees who are coming in need of shelter. He wants to throw out immigrants who are coming here to bring the best and the brightest. What did we see last week? We saw doctors who were thrown out of the country. Come on, Tucker.
David, I just want look, you're getting into the talking points which I hear every day and are boring. I want to get to the principles here. And here's the principle you just elucidated. You said these people came here to work in search for a better life. And I don't doubt that. I know some of them, and I think you're right. But there are a lot of people who would like to move to other countries for a better life, and I'm wondering if all of them have the absolute right to do that. So just to give you one among many examples, there are a ton of poor people in the city of Detroit. It's right on the Canadian border, right across from Windsor, Ontario. Do they have the right to move illegally to Canada and go on Canadian welfare programs and take Canadian jobs? And should the U.S. government be encouraging that?
Well, of course not, and that's why...
Well, what do you mean, of course not?
You asked me to answer your question, so let me try that.
I'm just surprised.
Let me try it. Tucker, let me try to answer your question.
Please.
Of course people shouldn't be moving into countries illegally. I don't think anybody, promotes that. What I'm here to talk about...
What are you saying? You're saying that people here illegal have a right to stay. That's what you just said. You've been saying it for 7.5 minutes.
Okay.
So, but they don't have a right to go to Canada to do that. Only a right to come here. Like, what's the consistent theme here? Just so those following along at home can know.
Tucker, the consistent theme is that we need to fix an outdated immigration system. You know that as well as I know that.
That doesn't mean anything. You're saying that people have a right here to stay here, even though they're here illegally, but they don't have a right to move to any other country illegally. Why the double standard? Simple question.
Well, what I'm saying is that people who have contributed to this country, people who have followed the rules, people who have children that have grown up in this country, people who have paid their taxes, people who will learn English, people who will be vetted through security screenings, people who, when we bring out of the shadows We want to know who's here. That will make us safer.
Okay, so what about
That's
people
what
who
I'm
haven't
saying.
followed the rules? So the president says we want to deport people who've committed felonies, and he's tried to do that, and people like you have gotten completely hysterical about it. Should he be allowed to deport people, as the previous president did, who committed felonies? Like, I mean, yes or no?
See, that's the thing. Nobody is arguing about whether or not we should deport felons or national security risks, Tucker. That's the whole point. Under the Obama immigration enforcement priorities, felons and national security risks and recent border crossers were number one for deportation. So if Donald Trump or if General Kelly really wanted to keep these enforcement priorities in place, why did they have to replace them?
But that's what they've been doing. Did you notice that the ICE roundups in the last week were almost exclusively of people with criminal records? This is the thing that we should fear? I mean, are you following the news at all?
Hang on, let me push back against that. I know what ICE is saying, and I know what Secretary Kelly said today. But what we don't have with any of those reports is transparency. They aren't telling us exactly who. We've had members of Congress, Joaquin Castro from Texas, members of the Hispanic Caucus. What we want is some transparency here.
I'm a little bit disappointed in the arguments that you've marshaled, but I hope you'll come back.
I'll be back anytime, Tucker.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
David.
you.
I appreciate it.
Welcome back to Hannity. So some New York City families are allegedly considering a boycott of an elite Upper East Side school because the grandson of President Trump is rumored to be attending kindergarten there in the fall. Now, this according to a report from the New York Post titled, "Trump Ties to Upper East Side School Stirs Moms." Sadly, this is just the latest example of the left demeaning the family of President Trump. Joining us now is the director of research at Bustle.com, Jessica Tarlov, and the host of Tommy on the Blaze. Tommy Lahren is with us. All right. First, they go after me. It was vicious what they did to Barron. I know. I've met him. Awesome kid. Smart, polite, intelligent, really good kid. Then now they're going after the grandchild and the son and the child of Don Jr. Then they stopped Eric Trump from raising money for St. Jude's Hospital a cancer ward because there might be conflicts with people that give money. And poor Ivanka, she can't do anything right. They're politicizing her line at Nordstrom's and elsewhere. And, every person that I know works here loves her stuff. Why are they going after kids, and what would happen if we did that?
We know what would happen, but this is just another example. What is that they like to say? When they go low, we go high.
Yes.
After the kids. It's a different set of standards, obviously. And if they're so shaken by having a child going to kindergarten, it's going to be a rough life for some of these individuals if they're going to want to shelter their children. But then again, colleges have safe spaces now. So they're just preparing them in kindergarten.
Legos, crayons, coloring books. Jessica, I never talked about Malia and Sasha. The only thing I've said is it seems like they're great kids.
Absolutely.
You know what? Why are you going after a 10-year-old? Why are you going after a kid going into kindergarten?
I've never done it. No one that I fraternize with has.
And they're going to beat up a girl, Ivanka, who's a lovely woman.
Listen, I think that going after a 10-year-old is completely unacceptable. Boycotting a school, it's a great school, completely unacceptable. Having a discussion about the Eric Trump Foundation or Ivanka and her clothing line, and these are adult children. I mean, Ivanka tweeted today a picture of her sitting between her father and Justin Trudeau talking about what they discussed in terms of advancing women.
So,
she is an advisor to the administration. That's not the same thing as just being a child.
You don't know if that wasn't a social moment?
Yes, we do know, but why was she in the first meeting with Prime Minister Abe? And also, Tommy, I just want to raise the point. In October of last year, you actually tweeted, compare Chelsea Clinton to the Trump kids. Right. This isn't about looks. # debate. What did you mean by that? Why are we talking about the kids? Why were you talking about the kids yourself? And for the record, if you want to discuss Ivanka, this is all open for discussion. We're talking about the fact that if Hillary would have won and Chelsea was sitting in the middle between two world leaders, you guys would have applauded her all night long. She would have been the poster child of the feminist movement. But if Ivanka is sitting there, all of a sudden it's inappropriate. I'm asking you about your tweet. And I'm not saying if Chelsea was doing that, listen, I wanted her to step down from the Clinton Foundation.
Wait, she explained it. Not about looks, about politics.
I'm sure that, Ivanka, you're talking about when I said compare the two. Yes, Ivanka has done great things. And Chelsea, for women. What? I'm talking about the way that the media covers the two is night and day, where people applauded Chelsea Clinton. What did you guys do to the Clinton Foundation compared to their Trump Foundation? $880,000
the foundation was corrupt.
Went to the Trump resort.
Excuse me.
What about the $77,000 cup of coffee?
All right, we're getting off base. I want to stop here for a second. if I went after the Obama kids, I probably would have groups of people wanting me fired. Wait a minute.
Sean, if you go after Beyonce, you'll have groups of people wanting you fired. Let's be honest. What's your problem with Beyonce? What I'm saying is the loving left that have found these celebrities, they are so protective of certain celebrities, but then others, they go for the jugular. So you see that this is not about...
I think this is the point. I thought you guys on the left were supposed to be tolerant. I thought you guys were supposed to be inclusive.
I am super tolerant and inclusive.
Okay,
I said no children at all.
Okay, but it's still happening.
It is
it's still happening.
Absolutely.
And it wouldn't have happened to the Obama kids. And if it did,
remember when
one
the
time, one assistant
was fired
and got
for it?
fired.
What
one
happened
person.
to Chelsea Clinton in the 90s? You remember that? It was horrific how they treated her as a teenager.
I don't remember that. I never
Bush
talked
girls,
about
I think, were treated very fairly. I don't remember much issue
Huge
there.
double standard. And here's my message to everybody. Leave the children alone. All right, Don Jr., Eric, Ivanka, they're
grown. And they're making policy decisions.
Okay, I said they're fair game.
Yeah.
Okay, they can defend themselves.
Absolutely.
Leave the young kids alone. It's really despicable.
During a visit to a Washington, D.C. public school on Friday, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos was blocked by protesters, including some from Black Lives Matter. Does this type of behavior do anything to help the students and the education system? Baltimore Ravens tight end and author of a book called Under Our Skin, Getting Real about race and getting free from the fears and frustrations that divide us, Benjamin Watson joins us now. Good morning to you, Benjamin. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm great. Thank you. What's your reaction to that, and what is your message for those protesters that were trying to block her from walking to school? Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Obviously, I agree with the concept of Black Lives Matter, of course, but a lot of what we've seen from the organization is a lot of disunity. And so you have people that are claiming to support them doing things like this. And anytime there's someone trying to help our children with education, I'm for that. I'm a product of public school, private school, as well as religious school. So anything that helps our kids get quality education, that's what I'm for. But you hate to see things like this when someone's trying to do their job and you're preventing them from doing their job. That's when you're taking your protest to another level.
Yeah, they're like hanging on to the car. They won't let her get out. She had to go to a back entrance instead of the front entrance.
But she eventually got into the school.
Eventually, yeah, she did. But they were blocking the front entrance of the school, and you can see what they were doing to the car. She had to go back around to another entrance. She said, I respect peaceful protests, and I will not be deterred in executing the vital mission of the Department of Education. No school door in America will be blocked from those seeking to help our nation's school children. What's your reaction?
Of course, of course. And you also saw the mayor of Washington, D.C. echo that as well, saying that, you know what, people have a right to protest. And we've talked about this over and over again, but people have a right to protest in a peaceful manner. But whenever you're doing something like this and blocking someone from their job, it not only hurts that person, but it also hurts the students that they're trying to help. I really feel that we need a conversation more about, actually, we need to listen a little more. I saw where Senator Cruz was engaged with some protesters earlier this week, and he was able to listen to some of the things that they said. And that's what we're not seeing a lot of, and that's what I'm trying to promote, is the fact that we need to step back and see the humanity behind the reasons why people feel the way they feel. Yeah. Protests are becoming common in our country.
I went to a Michael W. Smith concert last night at Carnegie Hall, and there were people of all races, all creeds, all backgrounds, all denominations. It was so cool when he was singing about America and our flag and God. When the whole room stood up, we were all on our feet. It was just so moving, and we all looked at each other and we said, this is what America needs. We need to turn back to our faith, in my opinion. I know you agree with that. You wrote the book Under Our Skin, and you're going to be speaking at a megachurch down in Florida. Tell us about it and what your message is.
Yes, we have a forum called Under Our Skin Forum, and basically what it is, it's a collection of pastors, authors, some sports figures, some educators as well, men and women, male and female, who are coming together to talk about race in a very real and honest way. We're going to have questions from the audience as well as have our own topics to address. It's going to be live streamed on livestream.com. It'll be this Thursday, February the 16th. Underourskinforum.com is where you can get more information. But our whole point is to foster this type of honest conversation when it comes to race. We don't have a lot of that now. A lot of what we have is bickering and fighting. People are being labeled. People aren't able to be honest. And this is a real issue that has real ramifications for not only us, but for our children. But we do believe that because God created us in his image, we have a responsibility to respect each other, and also a responsibility to stand for those who are facing injustice.
Benjamin, I wish you all the best. I wish more Christians would do what you're doing. I just applaud you for this. God bless you, and I hope it goes well. Let us know, okay?
Thank you. Will do.
Thank you.
Well, it's been 2 weeks since rioters at UC Berkeley used violence to force the cancellation of a speech by Milo Yiannopoulos. Most people were appalled by what happened, but Yvette Filarca is not among those people. Besides working as a public school teacher in California, she is the national organizer for the Coalition to Defend Affirmative Action, Integration, and Immigrant Rights, and Fight for Equality by Any Means Necessary. BAM is the acronym. Filarca is willing to integrate violence into her political agenda, as you can see from this clip of her disrupting a rally last summer in Sacramento.
Are these people going to get off our street? Hey, Dave, we don't have to give a speech. Here you go, boy. Hey, Dave, be nice. Be nice. Come here now. Off our street. Get the off our street. You, sir, please. I'm just here to protest. Please, stand down. Get out. Get back.
Filarca helped organize the Berkeley protests, and she says activists ought to copy his tactics for other speakers and events around the country. Yvette Filarca is with us now. Yvette, thanks all for joining us. So you did a bunch of interviews after, and you were asked about this, and you were, to your credit, I think, very straightforward about it and unapologetic, and you said, yeah, this guy was a fascist, Milo's a fascist, and we shut him down. You didn't pretend otherwise. We shut him down, and that's what you do with fascists. I think I'm characterizing what you said correctly. Just so we can understand the standard here, what is a fascist?
So a fascist is someone who's organizing a mass movement that's attacking women, immigrants, black people, other minority groups in a movement of genocide. That's what a fascist is.
Okay. So it's someone who's committing violence?
And it's someone who's committing violence and who's trying to organize other people to commit violence.
Okay.
And Milo Yiannopoulos is a fascist.
Okay. So he's committed acts of violence against the protected groups you mentioned?
Well, what he's doing is he's trying to be the youth face and the token that other people who are organizing violence try to hide behind. And so in all of his talks all over the country, what Yiannopoulos has done is whip up a whole lynch mob mentality where people who come to see him or his supporters not only agree with his views, but also attack other people. And that was certainly true in Washington State when one of his supporters came and actually shot an anti-fascist protester. But in Berkeley, we made sure that didn't happen because we were able to shut him down.
So, but you're conceding that Milo himself has not committed acts of violence, and nor has he incited violence by the legal definition. He'd be in jail if he did. But you're saying that because people who agree with him have committed violence, he should not be allowed to speak.
You know, fascist movement takes many forms, and it always tries to have one form that looks respectable and a little bit milder. But Yiannopoulos isn't just a stand-up comedian, and he isn't someone who just has ideas and posts them up on YouTube. He's someone who is funded by Breitbart and Steve Bannon to go around to college campuses to try to recruit other young people to then conduct those attacks on his behalf and on Trump's behalf. But I'm really, really glad to say that thousands of us were out there last week, or February 1st, and made sure that there were thousands of us to make sure that we defended our campus, this community, and especially the immigrant and Muslim students who were under attack and have been under attack by him and other fascists.
Right, and by using violence, I mean, you don't shy away from that by any means necessary is the name of your group, and so it implies violence. So what should we do with fascists? I mean, if you think that someone is espousing genocide, what should we do with them? I mean, should that person be allowed to walk free? Should we put him in jail? Should we kill him? Should we exile him? I mean, it's a sincere question. If you're willing to use violence because you think someone is espousing genocide, what's the penalty for that?
Well, first we've got to make sure we nip it in the bud, and we make sure that they're not allowed to recruit and act as if it's respectable to call for the mass murder of millions of people, in fact, millions who make up the majority of people in this nation at this point.
Okay,
and so they can't
just to be
hide
clear,
behind
there's
the platform of free
Milo
speech.
Yiannopoulos, this is not a defense of him, just a factual point, has not ever said that, in public anyway, not that we have a record of. There's no evidence that he has called for the genocide of anybody, as you know, but you're saying by transference in some way, he inspires people who believe that, I guess. But you're not getting my question. Like, when you say nip in the bud, should he be allowed to go on the subway and talk to the guy next to him about perhaps joining his movement? Or should he be allowed to talk to people in restaurants? Or what should we do with the fascist who you believe is inspiring genocide?
So first of all, the alt-right is a neo-fascist movement, and they're trying to hide behind some softer versions of their more open counterparts who identify themselves as Nazis. but they're still part of the same movement, first of all. Second of all, when someone is trying to speak at a campus or at a rally, they're doing it not just because they have an opinion, but someone like Yiannopoulos or any other alt-righter or fascist or neo-fascist is doing it to recruit other people. No, we don't let them recruit. And in fact, when you look back at the Holocaust and the lessons that we draw from that, we don't say, oh, well, at least we let them voice their opinion. We say never again.
Okay,
well,
so,
again
and when we say that,
Trump.
we elevate people like Dietrich Bonhoeffer or members of the plot against the leader of Nazi Germany to kill him. So, I mean, that was the response, of course, to the leader of that fascist movement. Most people think it was legitimate. Do you think, you're not answering my question, that people like Milo, who you've decided are fascists, should be allowed to speak in public? You said they weren't allowed to speak at Berkeley.
He should not be allowed to speak in public to spread his racist and misogynistic and homophobic lies. No, he does not have the right to do that.
What about
when he's using his speech to whip up attacks on people? No, he doesn't have the right to do that.
So
and to spread lies about our humanity? No, he doesn't.
Okay, so you're not allowed to say things that you think are untrue. Well, I mean, of course, in the case of Berkeley,
no,
he
that's
was
not what I said.
Okay.
I didn't say you're not allowed to say things that are untrue. But if you're trying to spread racism and hostility, misogyny, rape, whip up people to lynch people, or to certainly have that mentality to rape people or to lynch them, absolutely not. And any decent human being, whether it was in a classroom or at a restaurant, if they heard someone doing that, would turn around and tell them, you need to stop talking. You are not welcome here. This is not a safe environment. You need to go. Well, that's what we did at UC Berkeley, and that was a good thing.
Hit them or set fires. So you're a middle school teacher, which may surprise some of our students, or rather some of our viewers, that you have students. The First Amendment was always kind of the cornerstone of American civic life, the idea that you have the right to say something that other people may vehemently disagree with, but you have that right. It's enshrined in the Bill of Rights. Do you teach that to your students?
The First Amendment is about free speech, but that's not an abstraction. And if there was someone in my classroom who was espousing rape or genocide or attacks on Muslims, I would certainly make sure that I stood up for the rest of my students and told them they need to stop. And if they refused to, they would need to leave.
Would you hit them?
In fact, fascism
isn't just about abstract.
No, I'm not finished though yet. And I'm not finished yet. If there is a fascist in any situation that I was in, I would call for other people to take action too, but it's not just about the immediate moment.
Right,
it's also within the context of building a movement.
But I don't want this to be abstract.
Against Donald Trump
You're getting abstract.
And against fascism.
I want to bring this back to the concrete, as you said, and rightly so. So if there was a student in your class who started espousing what you believe is fascism, and you said you need to leave, you need to be quiet, you need to leave, and he didn't leave, would you hit him as you hit that protester? Would you beat him up?
No, of course not. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who, you know what, in Sacramento, there were fascists who had knives tied at the ends of sticks, and they stabbed people, including
Not the man that you hit. He looked kind of unarmed to me.
Oh, yes, actually, they did. And it's funny to you, but it's actually not funny to the rest of us. And that's why we take this really seriously.
I know that you take it seriously, and that's why I'm asking you a really simple question.
But I am serious as a heart. I am serious as a heartbeat.
Oh, I believe you. Oh, I believe that you're serious.
And we're not talking about a classroom. We're talking about people who are trying to kill and murder people and who've already done it. And who are trying to create a hostile environment on these campuses in order to do that. No, that's not a safe environment for immigrant students. That's not a safe environment for women or Muslim students or trans students. And so, yeah, we have a right to defend ourselves and real freedom.
Let's ask you one last question, if I may. So if you're standing, I just want to know, like the protocol for anti-fascist activists like yourself, you're standing on a street corner, someone starts saying something you don't like, and you think, boy, that's an act of hostility, that person's a fascist.
No, but you are misrepresenting the words that I've been saying. This isn't about not liking something. This isn't about Ben and Jerry's versus Stone Cold Pizza or something. This is about the lives of real people, immigrants who are under attack now, Muslims who are being massacred,
and I'm
women who are being raped.
How deep is your commitment?
So you're the one trivializing this, not me.
I'm not in any way trivializing. I ask you a sincere question. To what extent would you go to stop that person from spreading genocidal propaganda?
I would call for people to counter-protest, to stand up, and to shut down any
But what do you mean by
shut
down?
Like,
what if I want to keep talking? I'm saying something that you find appalling, but you know what? I've got a First Amendment right. I'm an American. What would you do? So a bunch of people come and say, stop that. I say, no, I'm not going to stop that. I'm an American. What are you going to do next?
You know, the First Amendment You know, you want to talk about the First Amendment? Coretta Scott King's letter wasn't allowed to be read on the floor of the Senate last week under the Constitution in the Senate.
That's exactly
and
what
yet,
happened.
And yet, at the same time, you're the one then who's actually trying to defend someone like a fascist speaking and recruiting at a college campus.
All right, Yvette,
I'm proud to say that we all stood up and we shut him down.
I don't want to abridge your speech rights. All right, thanks for coming on and showing us what you believe.
It is the most talked about moment from the Grammys. Singer Joy Villa on the red carpet wearing that dress right there. It says, "Make America Great Again." And shortly afterwards, sales of her album, I Make the Static, rocketed to #1 on Amazon. Joining us now is singer Joy Villa and the designer behind the dress, Filipino immigrant and President Trump's supporter, as you can see in the hat that he's wearing, Andre Soriano. Thank you both for joining us. Great to have you on our show.
Hello. Thank you very much.
Thank you
so
much for having us.
You're
welcome.
Joy, thank you very much, and happy Valentine's, everyone. Hi, lover. How are you?
I love you both, too. All right, Joy, I'll start with you. You know, the media is saying that folks like Meryl Streep and Madonna, that they are so brave. But what we're hearing in the studio and from our viewers is that you're the one who's brave to wear something like that in Hollywood on the red carpet. Why did you do it?
You know, there was a lot of controversy around the president and a lot of hate, honestly, and I wanted to change the narrative. I wanted in some small way to just show support and unity. And it's not about who you voted for or what you believe. It's more about love and unifying. You know, as the United States of America, for the world, they look at us, and if we're divided, it doesn't paint a good picture. So I wanted this dress to be a beacon of hope for love, for support, and for making a decision to go against the grain and to show support for something that is not talked about in the media, unfortunately. So it was a statement of love above all. That's why I wanted to do it. And Andre, he and I both decided we're going to do love.
Andre, how did this come to be? How did it happen?
Well, it's just like after the controversy in the women's march, someone said that they're gonna bomb the White House, and I was like, oh my God, Joy! I called him immediately. Joy! Oh my God, our country is divided. We have to move this country forward, you know. And as far as with your Static album, we're gonna make a Static and promote love. And you know, Joy always highly believe every time we collaborate, it's all about love. I mean, from the previous dresses and up to today, and this is like the time that we should move this country forward and promote love. That's why she was wearing the heart, and the message is she's so glamorously angelic with that white cape.
Well, it's a beautiful message. Joy, any backlash?
You know, of course there was backlash, and I knew going in that there would be, but I'm telling you, there's been so much support. I'm overwhelmed by support and love from people who are telling me, you know, thank you for making the choice to make a stand for what you believe in. I look up to you. I couldn't have said my views before. Now I feel like I'm able to speak my mind, and that's the whole point. We want a dialogue. Now, democracy is about, you know, different viewpoints, and that's totally okay. But when it starts to become a bullying platform, that I'm not going to be your friend, or you can't be a good person because of who you voted for, it's wrong. That I do not believe in. So we said, let's change the narrative.
Joy, I want to play.
I approve that message.
I approve that message. Joy, I want to play a message from a Latina supporter thanking you for the audience. Let's watch this.
We really did need this as Americans. You know, when we have people getting beat unconscious in the street because of who they voted for, it doesn't feel like America anymore. You made it feel like America again.
Wow, what's your reaction to that, Joy?
I'm touched. I am absolutely touched. She sent that to me on Twitter about a mere hours after I was on the red carpet, and the response from people like her make me feel like, wow, I really did do something to unify us. And that was the whole thing. Andre and I both said in some small way, if we can just change the tide of hate to love and open a conversation that says it doesn't matter what you believe or who you voted for, I'm still going to love you. And then we can have a conversation of respect and mutual respect. And that's all I thought we were going to do. her response showed me that was very much needed in this country. It's about healing, and that's what I see from her.
Andre, you're from the Philippines, and it looks like you're getting emotional when you watch that video and you talk about this. What's your reaction?
Well, it's really like I mean, there's an outward support of love, and I just want to say to everybody, happy Valentine's Day. We're always promoting love, and this is like the day to promote love, because it's, and support our president, please, everyone. And it's all about love, right, Joy?
Real quickly, how have your lives changed in the last 24 hours?
Wow.
Oh,
for me, it's the attention. My album is #1 on iTunes.
Congratulations.
This is the support from fans. #1 on Amazon. #1. Awesome. And that's because of fans and supporters.
That's great. Andre?
So true love is real.
Yes.
Andre, are you going to Are you going to address the First Lady now?
I just want to thank everybody for all the outpour of love. I mean, from the personal messages. You guys are so great. All the graciousness and gratefulness. Everyone is we're really truly honored and blessed. Thank you very much, everyone, for all the love that you shared.
Joy Villa and Andre Soriano, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see y'all later. Bye.
President Trump is making good on one of his signature campaign promises.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents arresting nearly 700 illegal immigrants last week. As Homeland Security confirmed, 75% of them are violent criminal offenders. Here to react is Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, a lot of people outraged by this, but this is business as usual over the last 9 years.
Well, this is what Donald Trump said that he was going to do. There are several classes of people that are here illegally. Somebody comes on a visa, overstays, gets married, has a family, has a job, gets a Social Security number, pays taxes, lives like the rest of us, even though they're here illegally, doesn't break the law. Another person comes here, commits a crime, prosecuted, convicted, serves their time, is ordered deported, and doesn't go home. Now, you have two very different classes of people. One is harmless and actually productive, but here illegally. The other is harmful, has committed a crime, and is here illegally.
75% of them are harmful. The 25% are not.
Correct. Trump is going after the 75% that are harmful. So, suppose Brian is the non-harmful and I'm the harmful, and he's hiding me in his house.
Arrest both of you.
They'd probably arrest both of us because neither of us is entitled to be here. In this scenario, I've committed the crime, he hasn't, but we're both here illegally. So, the Department of Homeland Security is trying to think about, do we really want to break up his family? Again, in this hypothetical. His wife is an American, his kids are American. No, they want to go after the guy who's dangerous, who's committed a violent criminal act, even though in this hypothetical I've served my time.
And in this hypothetical, this is how dangerous you would be. Let's put up this full screen.
You have to keep using me as the example.
You started it. Right. This is what they're being arrested for. They were convicted of homicide, aggravated sexual abuse, sexual assault of a minor, lewd and lascivious acts with a minor, drug trafficking, assault and battery, driving under the influence, weapons charges, and drug trafficking.
All right, now I'm going to give you some bad news, and that is if the person has not yet been ordered deported, they're entitled to a trial on deportation and an appeal. The government has its own lawyers. The government pays for their lawyers. Cost of the lawyers to prosecute, trial and appeal. Cost of the lawyers to defend, trial and appeal. Cost of the system, trial and appeal. $250,000 per deportation.
Wow. Kidding me?
You can't just ship them out.
No. All on the taxpayer's dime. The taxpayers pay for everything.
Did Donald Trump change that with executive order?
I don't think he can change that. The Supreme Court has ruled that they're entitled to lawyers, and the Supreme Court has ruled that if they can't afford the lawyers, the government has to pay for it.
See, the difference in administration is all going to be what happens next. For the most part, a lot of these guys were scooped up, and these family people were scooped up, and they were given a ticket. You come back and appear, and they never show up again, right?
Right.
So now the follow-through is going to be key.
Well, you don't keep getting the deportation trials. You get one trial and one appeal. So if you're ordered deported, and then you just disappear among the populace, and then they find you, you're gone. You don't get a second trial. But it's that first trial and appeal that costs us collectively $250,000.
You know, it's interesting, too. All of our areas are represented, too, because 190 were arrested in Georgia and North and South Carolina, hundreds from 6 Midwestern states,
Nobody from New Jersey?
From LA, 41 arrested from New York. You're a New Yorker now, you live here. And 51 arrested in San Antonio. But there are 11 different states that were represented. So this is not just the border towns.
No, because people don't always stay in border towns. And General Kelly, Secretary Kelly, and his people have an idea where these folks are, and they're going to find them.
He said he was very impressed with the professionalism in which they executed these deportations. He witnessed.
I didn't see any. I saw a lot of the clips. I didn't see any violence.
All right. Thanks, Judge.
All right,
Great to see you.
So inspirational. One time for your mind. Let it be known I'm led by God and never by man. Let it go. First of all, giving thanks to God for giving me the talent to rhyme. Gonna let my light shine for those still left in the darkness. Now let me ignite this ever-burning fire within. Not a fallen fad or a devilish trend. I'm here to mend those broken spirits with all my positive vibes from inside. The past year's loss of life was abundant, but God's wisdom shines bright like a prism. Only one decision left to be made. Live life, wipe away the strife, spirit filled to the gills with this currency that will lead to eternity. Universally is my longevity. Looking at this world in front of me. You are my